Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Tonight, we bring you a reimagined retelling of H.P. Lovecraft's chilling tale, The Hound. This version has been carefully rewritten to preserve the horror and atmosphere of the original, while giving you a fresh, unique experience, unlike any other. The sound never leaves me. A relentless fluttering, a nightmare beating of wings, and beneath it all, the distant howl of a monstrous hound. This is no dream, nor is it madness, for I have seen too much to cling to such merciful illusions. St. John lies torn apart, his body a ruin, and I alone know the reason. That knowledge drives me to the brink of self-destruction, for I dread the same fate will soon be mine. Through endless corridors of shadow, a formless nemesis hunts me, urging me toward annihilation. May heaven forgive the sickness of spirit that led us to this doom. We were weary of the dull world, where romance and adventure quickly soured into monotony. Together we chased every artistic and intellectual fashion, symbolist riddles, pre-Raphaelite ecstasies, but each delight faded too soon. Only the dark philosophy of the decadence held us, and even that demanded ever deeper, ever more blasphemous indulgence. Baudelaire, Huysmans, exhausted. Nothing remained but the raw thrill of forbidden acts, and so, in our hunger for sensation, we descended into the most detestable of pursuits, grave robbing. I will not recount the full horrors of our expeditions, nor the trophies we gathered in that accursed house we shared. But know this, beneath its stone walls we built a secret chamber, a museum of nightmares. Winged demons carved from basalt leered in the gloom, vomiting sickly green and orange light. Hidden pipes filled the air with perfumes of death, funeral lilies, narcotic incense, and, when our moods demanded, the stench of the violated grave itself. It was a place of blasphemy, a sanctuary of decay, and it was there that our doom began. The walls of our secret chamber were lined with horrors. Ancient mummies stood beside bodies preserved with such skill they seemed ready to breathe again. Between them, stolen headstones from the oldest graveyards leaned like trophies of blasphemy. In shadowed alcoves, skulls of every shape leered at us, some crumbling with age, others disturbingly fresh. Here lay the bald remains of long-dead nobles, and there the golden hair of children scarcely buried. Statues and paintings filled the room, each depicting scenes so fiendish that even we, their creators, sometimes recoiled. A locked portfolio, bound in human skin, hid drawings whispered to be the work of Goya himself, art too vile for him to claim. Instruments of every kind, string, brass, and woodwind, waited to unleash discordant shrieks, sounds so twisted they seemed to echo from the pit itself. And in ebony cabinets we stored the most obscene collection of grave plunder ever gathered by human hands. Of those relics I dare not speak. I thank heaven I destroyed them before I resolved to destroy myself. Our excursions to gather these abominations were not crude thefts, but rituals. We were no common ghouls. Each outing was chosen with care. Moonlight, weather, the mood of the night, all had to align. A single misstep, a wrong hour, a clumsy spade in the soil could ruin the ecstasy we sought in unearthing the earth's grinning secrets. We craved novelty, new landscapes, new sensations, and our hunger was insatiable. St. John always led the way, and it was he who guided us at last to that mocking, cursed place, the place that sealed our doom. What malignant fate drew us to that forsaken churchyard in Holland? Perhaps it was the whispers, dark tales of a ghoul who 5 centuries past had plundered a mighty tomb and carried away a forbidden relic. I see it still, the pale autumn moon spilling its light across broken graves, shadows stretching like claws over the neglected grass. Trees bent low, twisted and grotesque, as if bowing to the decay beneath them. Against the moon, vast swarms of bats wheeled in unnatural silence. The ancient church, draped in ivy, loomed like a spectral finger pointing toward the livid sky. And in ebony cabinets, phosphorescent insects flickered like ghostly flames. The air was thick with rot, vegetation and other odors too foul to name, carried on a night wind that seemed to breathe from distant swamps and seas. Worst of all was the sound, a deep, distant baying, the voice of some monstrous hound. We could not see it, nor place it, yet its presence gnawed at our nerves. The peasants had long whispered of this place, of the ghoul who had been found here centuries ago, his body torn apart by the claws of an unspeakable beast. We dug into his grave, spades biting into the damp earth, and thrilled at the scene, the grave yawning open, the moon watching, shadows writhing, bats circling, the church looming, the death fires dancing, the stench rising, and always that faint, directionless baying. Then our tools struck something harder than soil, a coffin, crusted with mineral deposits, sealed by centuries. It resisted us, thick and ancient, but at last we pried it open. Inside lay a skeleton, astonishingly intact, despite 500 years. Its skull gleamed white, teeth still sharp, sockets empty, yet filled with a fever we recognized as our own. Around its neck hung an amulet, an exquisite carving of a crouching winged hound, its semi-canine face twisted into a mask of death and malice. The jade gleamed with a sickly green light, its features repellent, its aura unmistakably evil. At its base, an inscription in unknown characters, and beneath, like a seal of doom, a grotesque skull engraved into the stone. The instant our eyes fell upon the amulet, we knew it must be ours. It was the only fitting prize from that ancient grave. Even had its form been unfamiliar, desire would have consumed us, but recognition struck deeper. The carving was alien to all sane art, yet unmistakable. We had seen its likeness whispered in the forbidden pages of the Necronomicon, the mad Arab's testament to horrors best left unspoken. It was the soul symbol of Leng, the cult of corpse-eaters, a relic born of nightmares. We seized the jade figure, casting one last glance at the hollow sockets of its long-dead owner, then sealed the grave as if nothing had been disturbed. As we fled that accursed place, St. John clutching the amulet, we thought we saw the bats descend upon the soil we had violated, as though feeding on some unholy essence. But the moon was pale, and we could not be sure. The next day, as our ship carried us from Holland, we thought we heard the baying of a monstrous hound carried on the wind. Yet the autumn breeze moaned so mournfully that we dared not trust our senses. Within a week of our return to England, the true horror began. We lived in isolation, hidden away in a crumbling manor upon a desolate moor. Few ever came to our door. Yet now, in the dead of night, we heard fumblings, scratches at the doors, rattles at the windows, even at the upper floors where no visitor could reach. Once a shadow blotted out the moonlight at the library window. Another time wings seemed to beat in the darkness beyond. Each time we searched,
we found nothing. We told ourselves it was imagination, the same imagination that still carried the faint baying from that Holland graveyard into our ears. The amulet rested in our museum, gleaming in its niche. At times we lit strange candles before it, their smoke curling like prayers to something unspeakable. We read in Alhazred's book of its power, of the link between ghouls' souls and the symbol it bore. The words unsettled us, gnawed at us, and then terror came.
On the night of September 24th, I heard a knock at my chamber door. Believing it to be St. John, I called for him to enter, yet what answered was not my friend, but a shrill, mocking laugh. The corridor lay empty. When I woke St. John, he swore he had not stirred, and his unease matched my own. That night, the baying we had once dismissed as imagination rose over the moor, no longer a phantom sound, but a dreadful certainty. 4 nights later, as we lingered in the hidden museum, a cautious scratching came at the door leading to the library stair. Terror seized us, not only fear of the unknown, but fear that our obscene collection might be discovered. We extinguished the lights and flung the door wide. A rush of air swept past, and from the darkness came a grotesque chorus, rustling, tittering, and a chatter that faded into the distance. It was no dream. The words were Dutch. From then on, horror became our constant companion. At times we told ourselves we were going mad, victims of our own unnatural indulgences. At other times we believed we were prey to some creeping doom. The house itself seemed alive, haunted by a malign presence. Each night the baying grew louder, rolling across the moor like the voice of damnation. On October 29th, beneath the library window, we found footprints in the soil, shapes beyond description, as baffling as the swarms of bats that now plagued the manor in ever greater numbers. And then came November 18th. St. John, returning from the railway station after dark, was attacked. His screams tore through the night, and I rushed to the scene. Against the rising moon I glimpsed it, a vast black shape, winged and cloud-like, hovering above him. My friend lay mangled, his body torn by some carnivorous horror. With his last breath he whispered, broken and incoherent, "The amulet, that damned thing." Then he fell silent, a lifeless ruin beneath the moon. At midnight I buried St. John in one of our forsaken gardens, whispering over his body the blasphemous rites he had cherished in life. As the final words left my lips, a baying rose across the moor, faint yet unmistakable. The moon glared above, but I dared not meet its gaze. A vast shadow swept across the dim-lit earth, drifting from mound to mound, and I collapsed face down, trembling. When at last I staggered back inside, I bowed before the jade amulet as though it were a god. Fear drove me from the manor the next day. I burned and buried the remnants of our obscene collection, but carried the amulet with me to London. Yet the curse followed. Within 3 nights the baying returned, and soon I felt unseen eyes upon me whenever darkness fell. One evening, walking along the embankment, I saw a black shape blot out the reflection of a lamp in the Thames. A wind stronger than any night breeze rushed past, and I knew St. John's fate was mine as well.
Desperation consumed me. I wrapped the jade amulet and sailed for Holland, hoping to return it to its rightful grave. Perhaps mercy could be found in undoing the theft. But when I reached Rotterdam, despair swallowed me whole. Thieves had stolen the relic, my only hope of salvation. That night, The baying was louder than ever. By morning, the city reeled in terror. In a squalid den, an entire family had been torn apart by something unseen. No trace remained, only the whispers of neighbors who swore they had heard it, all through the night, the deep, insistent cry of a gigantic hound. At last I returned to that cursed churchyard. The winter moon hung pale and merciless, casting grotesque shadows across the cracked slabs and frost-bitten grass. The leafless trees bent low as if in mourning, and the ivy-choked church pointed its spire like a mocking finger toward the hostile sky. From the frozen swamps, the wind howled like a lunatic choir, and the baying, once constant, fell silent as I neared the grave I had defiled. A swarm of bats scattered at my approach, their wings slicing the night. I cannot say why I came, whether to beg forgiveness or to babble apologies to the corpse I had wronged. Yet some force beyond my will compelled me to dig. The frozen earth yielded too easily, save for one grotesque interruption. A vulture swooped from the heavens, clawing at the soil as if to guard the grave. I struck it down with my spade and pressed on until the coffin lay before me. That was the last sane act I ever performed. For within the rotting box, surrounded by a writhing nest of monstrous bats, lay the thing we had once robbed. No longer placid bone, it was smeared with blood, tangled with alien flesh and hair, and its sockets glowed with phosphorescent hunger. Its fangs dripped crimson, twisted into a grin that mocked my doom. Then, from its jaws came a baying, deep, sardonic, the voice of a hound beyond death. And in its claw, slit with gore, gleamed the jade amulet we had stolen. I screamed. I fled. My cries broke into hysterical laughter that echoed through the night. Now madness rides the star wind, claws sharpened on centuries of corpses, wings dripping death, a carnival of bats from temples long buried. The bang grows louder, the wings circle closer, and so I turn to my revolver, the only escape left from the unnamable horror that hunts me still.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.